On October 2nd, 1187 AD, Balian of Ibelin surrendered the Crusader-controlled city of Jerusalem to Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. 818 years later, the film Kingdom of Heaven, dramatizing the fall of Jerusalem, was released. The real story is an especially politically complex period of history that the film oversimplifies to make for a better narrative. But how much did they cut out? How accurate is Kingdom of Heaven? The film opens in France in 1184 on a recently widowed blacksmith named Balian, who is visited by a group of crusaders when their leader introduces himself as Godfrey, the Baron of Ibelin, and reveals that Balian is his illegitimate son, and after a few missteps, he ends up accompanying him on his return to the Holy Land as a crusader. Now, we just glossed over the first 45 minutes of the film, and that is because it is totally invented for the story. Balian of Ibelin was a legitimate son of Baracin of Ibelin, and was born and raised in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And Balian was an established noble by 1184, and his father was long dead by the time the film takes place. Balian was allied with Raymond III of Tripoli, named in the film as Tiberius, and was a political opponent of the Templars, Renaud de Chatillon and Guy Lusignan. And both Renaud and Guy are portrayed as not just being allies of the Templars, but Templars themselves, which is erroneous. The film also has a fictional romance between Balian and Sibylla, the Princess of Jerusalem. Balian actually married Maria Comnena, Sibylla's stepmother, and Lady of Nablus, and it was Nablus that Balian ruled over, not Ibelin, which belonged to his older brother Baldwin. The film has Guy and Renaud attacking Muslim caravans in order to entice Saladin into war with the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In fact, Renaud was the only Crusader lord who actively attacked Muslims, and though he did support Guy for the throne, Guy never encouraged him in his actions and was actually against war with Saladin and tried to avoid it. Baldwin IV, the King of Jerusalem, really was a leper, as in the film, and did rule longer than he was expected to. He held a loose peace with Saladin, and following his death, there was a succession struggle. Immediately after his death, his 9-year-old nephew Baldwin V took the throne, but died just a year later, and the succession struggle was between Baldwin IV's sister Sibylla and their half-sister Isabella, whom Balian actually supported as her stepfather. However, Isabella's husband, Humphrey IV of Turon, refused to start a civil war, so Sibylla took the throne. Unlike in the film, she was loyal to her husband Guy, but in order to appease the nobles, was first required to separate from Guy, with the idea that she would select some other noble to be her king after her coronation, but instead chose Guy immediately. In the film, following Guy's ascension to the throne, he sends Renaud to give him a war, and proceeds to raid more Muslim caravans and even kills Saladin's sister, finally drawing the Muslims to war. Really, Saladin went to war for a multitude of reasons, and the death of his sister was not one. In fact, after caravans started coming under attack, he ensured that his sister was properly protected and no harm came to her. And unlike in the film, Guy did not recklessly advance his army to meet Saladin's, but was drawn out after Saladin began attacking various castles in the kingdom, forcing Guy into a confrontation at the Battle of Hattin, where the Crusaders were wiped out. The film references that Saladin's army numbered over 200,000, and implied that the Crusaders were not much less. The real numbers were around just a tenth of that. Also left out was that both Raymond of Tripoli and Balian fought at the battle, but managed to escape, and the scene following the battle, where Saladin gives a cup of ice water to a captured Guy and then beheads Renaud, is true. We actually have a very detailed account of this, as Saladin's personal historian was with him at the battle. Only alluded to in the film is that ice water carried a very ceremonial meaning in this instance. Also, Saladin only killed Renaud after he refused to convert to Islam. Following the defeat of the Crusader army, Balian is appointed defender of Jerusalem, where he successfully holds off a 10-day siege and then parleys with Saladin for terms of surrender. And like in the film, Balian really did threaten to burn the city down rather than give it over. However, Saladin did not then relent and allow the Christians to leave freely, but instead demanded a ransom for the people. And this takes us to the character most short-served in the film, Patriarch Heraclius of Jerusalem, who was relegated to an almost background character, and even a cowardly villain. The real Heraclius supported Balian in his defense of the city, and he helped in paying the ransom for the people of Jerusalem, first with money and then by trading prisoners. But they came up short for the city's poorer citizens, so both Heraclius and Balian offered themselves as hostages in exchange, but Saladin turned them down and instead took the remaining citizens as slaves. Following the fall of Jerusalem, Balian remained in the Holy Land and did not retire from politics as in the film. And while the film seems to end on a note of peace, these events actually set the stage for the Third Crusade, often considered the most violent. In the end, Kingdom of Heaven is a reasonably accurate movie, and when you look at it from a bird's eye view, all the parts seem to move and act as they should, but when you zoom in on the individuals involved, people are rarely where they're supposed to be. But we left a lot out. We didn't mention a ton of supporting characters, or really most of what happened outside of the city of Jerusalem, and you may have noticed that we barely mentioned religion at all. But what did you think? Let us know in the comments below, and let us know what other movies we should take a look at next. And be sure to check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.